5 degrees tomorrow, and then 5 degrees the next day, we add those two numbers together to get 10. So they're going to be 10 accumulated thermal units old. Now if they're day 3, they're another 5, then they'll be 15 accumulated thermal units old. When you add up all your temperatures and you get 220, that's when you're at the eyed egg stage. And then if you double 220, you get 440. At 440 accumulated thermal units, that's when they're at the elephant stage. So these little embryos in here have grown, and that splits this little leather part of the skin, and then this little guy stretches out. Now this elephant has got all the food he needs right here. Now remember, Mom buried them under the gravel. So they're buried, they're buried, they're buried. We have to keep them in darkness here for the same amount of time that Mom would do it in the river. So in the river, these little guys would be with their 500 brothers and sisters, all in a little red, and they'd be having a little party down there. As long as they've got oxygen and cold water, they've got all the food that they need right here. But every day, that food supply gets a little bit less and less and less. And once that yolk sac is all ingested, they look at each other and they go, uh-oh, now what are we gonna do? Well, what they do is they stick their noses in between those rocks that Mom covered them up with, and they come up to the top of to the bottom of the river. They get used to the light, and then they thrust their body up to the very top, and they take a big gulp of oxygen. And when they do that, that's when we say that they become fry. When they become fry, they can swim around in the light. The light won't kill them anymore. They swim around in the river. They're looking for little bugs to eat. So in here, we can take the cover off, we turn the light on, and we start feeding them. And they need to be fed very often, but not very much. And that will probably be mid-January to the end of January. So we usually keep them January, February, March, April, and May. So towards the end of the school year, that's when we take our salmon and we let them go. And we've got a special license to release these little fry into Tronquil River. And that's just west of Kamloops. And we let them go in there. And coho fry like to stay in the river over winter. So we're gonna let them go in May, in the spring. They're gonna stay there all summer. They're gonna stay there all fall. They're gonna stay there all winter. And in the early spring is when they turn into, I call them teenagers, but they're called young salmon or smolts. And then when they're smolts, they're gonna say, time for me to leave my river. I'm gonna head down to the ocean. And so as smolts, they start heading down to the ocean. Once they reach the estuary, they get used to that salty water. And once they're used to that, they head out into the ocean as an adult. So all of these stages are in fresh water. This stage is in salty water. And the salty water stage is about half of their lifespan. So coho, on average, live for 3 years. So they spend about a year and a half of their life in the fresh water, and then they spend a year and a half of their life out in the salty ocean water. And then towards the end of their life, as an adult, they decide that they want to come home. They're tired, they're near the end of their life cycle, and that's when they become a spawning salmon, or a spawner, we sometimes say. And that's when they want to head home. The creek that they're going to head home to is the one that imprinted onto them when they were at the fry stage.